Welcome to the True Potential Women's Summit. I am your host, Andrea Cairella, and the benefits of the summit are to help ambitious women feel feminine, fabulous, and free, live up to their true potential, and communicate with confidence. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Alison Armstrong, and she's a sought-after speaker in the area of gender differences, well-being, empowerment, sexuality, and relationships. She is the author of The Queen's Code and creator of the widely acclaimed Queen's Code workshop series. And today we are going to be talking about managing expectations, how to move beyond our shoulds, and get to the heart of the matter. We'll cover the Queen's Code and how women can feel feminine, fabulous, and free, how women can deepen their self-love and self-confidence, and how to silence their inner critic, feel self-trust, and clearly make decisions that are in alignment with their truth. Welcome, Alison. It's wonderful having you here today on the summit.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, what is the Queen's Code, and what are some tips on how women can feel feminine, fabulous, and free?
So it's called the Queen's Code, and it comes from when I started studying men in 1991. I started with the question, what if men are responding to women? And I wanted to find out why the same man treated different women in such different ways. Like, it's almost as if three different women didn't know the same man because of how he was interacting with her. And I mostly was the woman that got interacted like a pal, right? Or a barmaid. And then there was the woman who was, being sought after sexually. And then every once in a while, there's this woman who inspired admiration and devotion and generosity and someone who wanted to make her dreams come true. And I was never that person. And the way that I explained it was that I didn't get the Grace Kelly gene. I was born in 1960, so Grace Kelly was my mother's model of the ultimate woman, and that men would be devoted to and all that stuff. So as I started listening to men describe what they were responding to in women, it really crystallized as a set of characteristics or qualities that the word that they would use the most is a queen. So men would say, I'm looking for my queen. She is my queen. Hopefully I'll find my queen. It was a set of qualities that they craved. They didn't question why that was so appealing to them or why they would be so devoted. It made perfect sense to them when another man was devoted to a woman who were like, well, of course, she's his queen. That was back in 1991. It started this whole quest of what are these qualities that inspire men to be all these amazing ways. That comment of, she makes me want to be a better man. That's a queen quality that makes men want to be a better man. So that's where it all started in the dictionary. One of the definitions is a woman who reigns in her own right, which is so important to who women are these days after millennia of dependency. Have dominion over our own lives is something that women seek. We have in some ways legally, but we don't have it in our being. Our instincts still compel us to please people instead of to be authentic and stand for our own truth. And what I articulate is honor yourself first and then other people. So that's where it all started and came from. And it's been 2.5 decades of exploring that and figuring out ways to give women access to the best part of themselves.
Can you offer some suggestions on how women can silence their inner critic, fully trust themselves, and clearly make decisions that are in alignment with their truth?
In the Queen's Code book, which is fiction, Claudia calls that voice the perfect person. In our workshops, we call that voice the ideal woman. I've never been able to silence the voice, like permanently. I've had periods of quietness that are yummy, not consistent. The best approach I've ever discovered, a couple of them. One is that voice causes so much damage because we think it's our voice. We think that about ourselves. And therefore, since I think it, I should act on it. And an upgraded approach would be to change the status of that voice to an advisory board. That voice is a member of the advisory board, has an interesting perspective on life, has some recommendations, but I do not give it decisive authority. That's sort of an enlightened view of that voice. Interesting what it's noticing. No, we're not going to act on that. On the other hand, I've thought of that voice as outright crazy and mean because you might notice when we're down, that voice doesn't lighten up. That voice will kick you in a ditch. Often what I found when it's like that, you have to expose the voice. You have to put it on loudspeaker to someone who might even bring a sense of humor to it. Like, wow, your ideal woman's doing a number. She's hilarious. Or, wow, she really is psychotic. She's crazy. Actually done exercises, we've exposed that voice to ridicule. And it gets so quiet when you do that. Like, she thrives in the dark, in the secret, where only you are the one that knows that you're imperfect in this way and should spend your whole life fixing that. You put her on loudspeaker and she just becomes silly.
How can women set realistic expectations so they can set themselves up for success?
Many people are familiar in Tony Robbins' work. He talks about human needs and the need for certainty and uncertainty. And Mastin Kipp of the Daily Love took it to another level of what he calls reckless certainty and reckless uncertainty. And the caution I would give before I say any of these other things is watch for the need for reckless certainty. I bring it up because I'm an extremely decisive person. And after talking to Mastin, I realized that many times I will decide something in order to escape the tension that I experience by not deciding, by not just letting something sit there unresolved and let it become clear. So instead of like taking a muddy pond and letting it just sit there and not stir it till it becomes clear and the answer is obvious, I'll just quick make a decision so I can move on. So decisiveness is good, and beware of reckless decisiveness. Just because it's so hard to allow uncertainty to stay there, allow ourselves to not know, allow something to be cloudy or unclear, and allow itself to clarify itself in its own time. And that's, I think, also part of being decisive is we try to put a gallon into a Dixie cup because of the instinct that has become known as FOMO, right? Fear of missing an opportunity. And it has to do with, as a human being, we have a hormonal limbic brain response to the perception of a threat. And people tend to recognize that, I'm afraid. But most people don't know is that your body reacts the same way to the perception of an opportunity. Because the moment after you perceive an opportunity, what arises is the fear that you'll miss that opportunity. It's like if a bunch of bison arrive in your valley, whoa, goody, bison. But then if you don't catch any, you just wasted all that energy and now you die. Opportunities, I call them distractions. We try to do so much because we're literally hooked by the perception of all these opportunities. It goes back to the first thing that we were talking about. Can you sort all the things that are coming at you by who you really are? What does that have to do, like what you set up for yourself this year? What does that have to do with freedom? What does that have to do with love? What does that have to do with joy? Or is it just something that your instincts are attractive to because it seems like then you'll survive or you'll avoid dying, avoid not surviving. The softer words for that are success and failure. They hook into the same instincts as survival and death. I think it has everything to do with clarity. And what if that's what we pursued, was clarity, and could trust that when we're clear, the answer will be obvious. And when people are pushing us to decide before we're clear, it's because they're pushing for a particular decision, the one that's an advantage to them, but may not be the right decision for you. I have a cue. I've always known I was going to live a really long time. And so I have things I've been passionate about since I was a little girl, but it's not time to work on it yet. So what if all those opportunities, instead of having them in a basket, you put them in a line? They had to queue up. Get yourself in a line, and what's at the front of the line is the thing that you would most regret not doing. If I died and didn't do that, would I regret it more than any of the others? It's like having a bucket list no matter what age you're at. I mean, I've been saying something to myself for a couple decades now about if it's real, it'll still be there. What I say, I have a deal with the universe that anything important will come round again. I created that deal when I was writing my first book, and I'd have an idea, and I think, oh my gosh, I can't forget this. So I'd write it down and I'd stick it in a file. And then I have another idea, and I think, oh, I got to make sure to put that in the book, and I'd write it down and I'd put it in the file. When I finally opened up the file, it was the same 3 or 4 things written over and over and over again.
What is your definition of love, and how can women deepen their self-love and self-confidence?
Well, like your question has 2 parts. There's 2 parts of the answer, at least. The first is to articulate who you are. What is the essence of who you are? What makes you uniquely you? So we learned pretty early on that an easier way for a woman to articulate the essence of who she is to look at what she is compelled to cause for the people she loves. She can see it in this exercise. It's called the fairy godmother. So if you were a fairy godmother and you could wave a wand and everyone you loved had some quality in their life for the rest of their life without having to do anything about it, what would you wish for them? And it's not for individual people, because now you're fixing them. For all the people you love, if they could have one thing, what would you have them have? And what else would you have them have? And what else would you have them have? And we found that when women look outside of themselves, that's actually how we can find ourselves much more easily. And it's part of what we call being externally motivated. For example, my number 1 noble quality is freedom. And I'm in pain when I see people tied up in knots, not free in some kind of mental or emotional prison where they don't have access to their own choices and options. I'm always working towards people being free and liberated. And healing to me is all about being liberated, just as an example. So we've worked with thousands and thousands of women now in being able to articulate the words that really are, you could call it their name. At a spiritual level, it's their true name. And the fascinating thing is that I've never once interacted with people who had the same qualities. I mean, they might have the same first quality, even the same first 2 qualities, never the same first 3 qualities. And then if you ask them to describe the quality, they don't even describe it in the same way. They have a completely different take on what that quality is. And so that would be the first step, to articulate who you are, because that's what to keep grounding yourself in. That's what to make sure you're honoring. And then you can get on to your second question, which is, then there's feeding that. And it's a very simple process, but doesn't make it easy. And that is, the way I say it is, if you're going to manifest who you are as a spiritual being in a physical paradigm, which Earth is, you literally have to get that quality of who you are into your body. So what puts joy in your body? What puts peace in your body? what puts creativity in your body, that you actually, when you check in your body, you feel creative. And they're often really basic things like sleeping or being in nature, sleeping, affection, spending time with the people that bring out the best in you. They don't just bring out the best in you, they put the best into you. I snuggle with my dog. It's we call it a tank filler. My year-old border collie fills my tanks. If I have time with Buck, I'm a better person. I'm more me.
What tips do you have that can allow women to overcome fears and self-doubt so they can be fully self-expressed and authentic in their relationships?
Such a great question. Well, there's so many ways to go about it, and there's a lot of sorting to do, because one of the things that gets collapsed all the time for human beings are what we truly need and what we expect. Our expectations are largely invisible. Like literally, we don't even see what we expect until that expectation isn't met. So as long as an expectation is met, everything just seems that it is as it should be. That this is as it should be. People are doing what they should be doing. They're saying what they should be saying. They're acting how they should be acting. It largely doesn't even register. Another way of thinking about it, to tie this into what I'm the biggest expert on, which is men, is when your expectations are met, what you have is zero. So there's no positive, there's just a not negative. When we notice our expectations, when they become visible, is when they're not met, when they're disappointed, when they're failed, because it's supposed to be that way. It should be that way without me having to do anything about it. The analogy I like is if you go to a hotel, you shouldn't have to call the front desk for towels. So we resent even the effort of having to call to get towels. Well, this shows up for women a lot in their relationships with men. I shouldn't have to tell him. If I have to ask for it, it doesn't count. This will prevent a woman from expressing what it is that she really, truly needs, because it just gets lumped in with the things that she expects. He should already know. He should already do it. Any decent person would. If he loved me, he would have figured it out already. There's all these assumptions. Well, we've asked them if they could have one superpower to get along better with women, what would it be? And it's funny because mind reading is the number one answer, as long as they could also turn it off. The thing is, it's a human quality, because to men, they have a different version. What they say is there's no point in stating the obvious. What they expect, they think is obvious that it should be that way. And they're not going to waste any energy talking about what's obvious, because, they're always conserving calories. So men and women, for different justifications, different explanations, have the same instinct of there's things that just should be a certain way, and no effort should be required to make them that way, which is the definition of entitlement, by the way. I just deserve it to be that way. I shouldn't have to effort anymore.
What are 3 tips to creating deep connection and long-lasting, loving relationships?
Well, I can tell you a couple of things. One is it will take courage, because both men and women have numerous instincts that tell us it's stupid. Do not go there. Do not have a need. Do not admit to having a need. Do not tell someone else about your need. Do not ask anybody else to fulfill your need. Get it done yourself or go without. Instincts to conceal our needs are so strong because we interpret our needs as a weakness, and you never want to show an adversary a weakness. And human beings default to thinking of other human beings as adversaries, which is a nice word for an enemy. If you're going to own your needs and express them and ask for them in a way that's real, that's empowering, that's inspiring, we call it a victory of human spirit, and it will take courage. You have to take your fear in your hands. And the good news is the second most attractive quality in a woman, and men respond to it. And yes, you'll feel vulnerable. Authenticity is vulnerable, but it is so compelling to men. If they can't give you what you need, they will go looking for someone who can. They're such providers. The other good news is the way that our brains work. So our brains literally have all these trails and paths and streets and freeways in them. And they're all created by whatever we had the most energy about. This is why trauma creates freeways in the brain. If you get really excited about owning something you need and telling somebody about it, like you get, oh my gosh, I told him, I'm so proud of myself, I told him. Jump up and down. Your brain wakes up and goes, oh, we should remember this. Oh, this is a good thing. Oh, we should pave a road here. And if you get excited every time, your brain actually will jump on that highway. Like, oh, you need something? Tell him. You can rewire your brain by what you get excited about. I'll go, oh. So if you notice you need something, oh, I noticed I need something. And I'll go, oh, okay, noticing we need something is really important. Let's do that. And it's a whole process of depositing protein. It's called myelination. And you can literally make it easier to be authentic by getting so excited about either noticing you are inauthentic or by giving yourself credit for being authentic. Even just noticing you're inauthentic will work. And you owe this to me and you should have already done it, which means that by him doing what she just criticized him for not doing, that just means he'll be out of trouble. It won't mean that he'll be appreciated. It won't mean that he will win. It won't mean that he'll get any points. It won't mean that he'll have been her hero. He'll just be out of trouble. And men consider doing things just to stay out of trouble to be dishonorable. They're ashamed of themselves whenever they do something just to keep from upsetting someone. It's not inspiring or motivating to them. In fact, it creates a resistance in them to do whatever it was that she was critical of. Another thing that happens is if she's beyond that, if she's angry, the way that my husband Greg put it was, it doesn't matter how logical or reasonable your need is, it's forever tainted by your anger, and I can't do it. So women express themselves critically because that's how you get things from women. Women respond to criticism by changing their behavior. Men respond to criticism by changing their behavior, but not by doing what you asked, by keeping their distance, by shutting down, by concealing more, even by lying. We never get what we need from men. Well, if you think of a man as a warrior and a hunter, when we criticize, he becomes the warrior and he's protecting himself. When we ask for what we need, he becomes the hunter and goes out and finds it and drags it home. So which set of instincts are you appealing to? His instinct to protect himself, or his instinct to provide for other people? We have everything to do with which one is coming out.
I really enjoyed this conversation with you today, Alison.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for what you're doing.
Now, I know you're offering a free gift to our audience. What is the link?
Send them to understandmen.com.
And I'll go ahead and include that for our listeners as well.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. You take care.
Once again, I'm Andrea Cairella with True Potential Counseling, and just to recap what we covered today, we discussed the Queen's Code and how women can feel feminine, fabulous, and free, how women can deepen their self-love and self-confidence, and how to silence their inner critic and fully trust themselves so that they can make clear decisions that are in alignment with their truth. Stay tuned for the next interviews that are coming up. I look forward to connecting with you again on the True Potential Women's Summit. Have a great day. Have a great day.